Five things you need to know if you want to move to Mexico in 2024. So I've been to Mexico for each of the last 5 years, started in 2019, and for 5 years straight, traveled to Mexico every winter. The first trip was 10 days, the second trip was 7 weeks, and then 3 months, 3 months. And then I started traveling to Mexico plus other countries. And then this last winter, I didn't go to Mexico because it's a big world out there and I wanted to explore. But on my 5 trips to Mexico in the last 5 years, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what Mexico has and what it doesn't have as far as from an expat's perspective, from an American, somebody from the US, what a North American, somebody from the US or Canada, for instance, might be looking for in a country down there. I've traveled all over Mexico, not the entire country, but I did go all the way from Baja to the Yucatan and from the Gulf all the way to the Central Highlands. So I did experience a diverse level of the different things that Mexico has to offer from an expat's perspective. And I want to talk about the 5 things that you need to know if you're moving there in 2024. So the first one is that prices are going up. I've seen people who have been living in Mexico for the past 5 years or more, and they're putting out videos about the costs, and clearly it's gone up quite a bit. Now, there's two factors involved. There's inflation, and then there's also the currency, the relative strength of the dollar or lack of strength of the dollar relative to the peso, the Mexican peso. So, in terms of inflation, we all know that inflation has, gone global, and some places have been hit more than others, but Mexico's definitely been hit by a heavy dose of inflation. I don't have exact numbers if it's more or less than the US has been hit, but it's been significant. It's made a big impact on prices in Mexico. And the other factor is the currency exchange. So back a few years ago when I was going to Mexico, you could get 21 pesos to the dollar at one point. Now I believe it's hovering somewhere around 17 pesos to the dollar as of May 2024 when I'm making this video. So 17 down from 21, that's significant. That you will notice that is not something that is just going to go, you're definitely going to notice a difference between, because the thing is, when you're getting 21 pesos to the dollar versus 17 pesos to the dollar now as compared to a few years ago at 21, and then you add in inflation, the figures I've been quoted is somewhere between 50 to 75% less of what you get for your money. So in other words, something that a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, would have cost $1, now it's going to be $1.50, $1.75. Something that's going to cost $10, it's going to go up as well, $15, $17. So, this is a function of inflation and the currency exchange rate. So don't be thinking necessarily that you're going to get a great deal. Now, I've been to other countries in Latin America where prices are actually better for US dollars. So we'll get to that later. But I wanted to start out with the prices for Mexico. So now the next one is, people are not exactly, I wouldn't say people are unfriendly in Mexico. But now that I've been to 4 different Latin American countries in the last few years, I realize that there's other countries where people are more friendly. So what I think, I don't really know what's going on. It's not that people are unfriendly. You smile at people, they smile back. You say hi, they'll say hi back. I think it may be something in the culture. Tell me what you think about this. Write it in the comments. But there's something sort of, it's not exactly deadpan, but it's neutral. There's neutrality to the presentation of the Mexicans that I've met. And I've told you, all through the country, many different states of the country. It's not necessarily like, hey, how you doing? Engaged. Really super friendly, glad to have you here. It's more like, hi, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Hi. It's more neutral, and it could be part of the culture. It could be the fact that the statistics I have is that there's over 1 million people from the USA and Canada that are living in Mexico, either full-time or part-time as snowbirds. So if you think of 1 million people coming down there from north of the border, that's going to make a big impact. You're going to have people, maybe they're used to the Americans and the Canadians. Maybe they're over that. I don't know. But I didn't find people super engaging, super friendly, just kind of neutral. So I think that's important to know, because if you're expecting people to welcome you with open arms, I didn't experience that. I just experienced people being friendly. The level of service is very high. If you're talking about drivers and restaurants and the tourist industry, they all treat you well. In fact, sometimes very well. But I didn't find the level of engagement that I found in some other countries that we traveled to, which I will come to. So number 3 of the things you should know if you're moving to Mexico in 2024, the food is great. This is really key because, a lot of us are foodies, I'll count myself as one. And the food was just exceptional. Many of the different areas we went to, we found it good. And it's not your Tex-Mex taco and burrito. I mean, tacos and burritos, sure, if you're in Texas, I suppose that's what you're getting. But, you got to realize this is a big country, and they've developed different culinary traditions in the different parts of the country. So I haven't even been to some of what are supposed to be some of the highlights of Mexican cuisine, such as Oaxaca. I haven't even been there yet. But the places I was at, the state of Jalisco, Baja, the Yucatan, Veracruz, Michoacan, all very, very high level of cuisine. And, just different levels, from kind of the basic taco hole in the wall kind of place, to more of like finer dining. So if you're looking for good food, Mexico is a great place. So number 4, as I've said, this is a huge country. If you're wanting to move to Mexico in 2024, where are you going? Are you going to the beach? Are you going to the mountains? Are you going to the south of the country, to the north of the country? It's a huge country. So, there's no one size fits all. If you want to go to Mexico in 2024 or move there, you've got a wide variety of options, because the Central Highlands, Michoacan, we were in the town of Pátzcuaro, I believe over 7,000 feet elevation. Then you've got coastal areas, which of course are sea level. I was in Jalisco, which is Ajijic. It's one of the popular expat destinations. That's, I believe, at about 5,000 elevation. So you can go from low to high. You can go from beach to mountains. You can go to jungle. We're in the Yucatan. I mean, this is, they've still got jaguars in the forest there. We didn't see any, but, trust me, they're there. That's what they told us. So Mexico is a huge country, so there's no one size fits all. You've got to figure out what you're talking about in Mexico, because where we were in the Yucatan, there's still Mayans there. Some people think the Mayans were an ancient culture that disappeared 500 years ago when conquistadors came over from Spain, and that's not true. There's still towns that are just like predominantly Mayan down there. So the Mayan culture is going to be very different than what you'd experience further north, in further northern parts of the country. So if you're looking to go to Mexico, there's not one Mexico. There's many different Mexicos, and they have different cuisine and different climates and different temperatures. When you're at 7,000 feet elevation, it's much cooler. You're going to have to put on, pants and a jacket. You're not necessarily going to be just like, in flip-flops and swimsuit at the beach. So it's a very different country in the different parts, and just be aware of that. So number 5 of the 5 things you should be aware of if you're moving to Mexico in 2024, and that there's a big world out there. I alluded to this before, but there, even just within Latin America, I don't know if there's a dozen or more other countries in South America, Central America. It's got to be more than a dozen. But I've been to Ecuador, I've been to Nicaragua, I've been to Costa Rica. Each of these countries is different. I found in Ecuador and Nicaragua and in Costa Rica, the people are very friendly, particularly Nicaragua and Ecuador. In Costa Rica, they're very serviceful because they're very used to tourists. It's a high, tourism is the number 1 industry in Costa Rica. So they're very used to gringos, people from north of the border, other European countries, and they're very serviceful, and they're very into pura vida, the good life, the pure life. They're very into keeping a high vibe, a high level of good vibes going. And so I think it's important that if you're moving to Mexico in 2024, that you realize there's a lot of other countries out there. There's Europe, there's Southeast Asia, heck, there's Africa, North Africa, Middle East, Dubai, Eastern Europe. There's so many places in the world. So if you think, say you're from the US or Canada, and you think, I want to leave the country, so I guess I'm going to Mexico. There's a lot of other countries. Don't feel limited. Go explore. I'm hoping to go to Europe later this year, and I'm hoping next year to go to Asia. And so, I want to explore the world. I realize that, I'm not just moving to Mexico because I've been there 5 years in a row and I have friends there and I'm used to the country and I've been to the same places over and over, and I've sort of know the lay of the land. No, it's a whole world. I'm going to go explore it. So I think if you take these 5 things, thinking about in terms of moving to Mexico in 2024, it'll help your move, and maybe you'll consider other options and not just limit yourself to Mexico. But if you do go to Mexico, I do think it's a great country. I think you will love it. Just be prepared. Expenses, diversity of the country, the food, and there's a whole other world out there, a whole big wide world out there besides Mexico. So enjoy.